Back here on the Meat Speak podcast, powered by the certified Angus beef brand. Brian Shaw, meat scientist Diana Clark. Diana, how are you?
Doing pretty good today. Can't complain.
That's excellent. We are here via Zoom, and what a day it is, right? If you look into the dictionary, look up the word penultimate, which means it is the next to last episode of season 2 here on the podcast. And what an episode we have planned. I'm shaky, I'm giddy, right? I'm about to have my, Wayne Campbell meets Alice Cooper moment. And I'm just going to bow down and say, we're not worthy, because our guest today is an Emmy award-winning filmmaker, author, photographer, and has been dubbed the foremost authority on hamburgers by the New York Times. His 2004 film Hamburger America was not only nominated for a James Beard Award, but has since been recognized by the U.S. National Archives as an integral piece of American food history. The film also led to the creation of the book Hamburger America, which offers a state-by-state guide to burgers, and later his first cookbook called The Great American Burger Book. Today, you can find him hosting the Burger Scholar sessions on YouTube's First We Feast, or on the north side of the Burger Slide at his Brooklyn home. Please welcome to the podcast the man who has never steered me wrong when it comes to finding a great burger anywhere I'm traveling, the great George Motz.
That was an awesome intro.
Thank you, sir. That's right. So we write these. They can also double as like an obituary as well. So
thank you.
Thanks. I'm going to hang on to it.
Calling you.
That's right. Calling you. So, man, you've got actually, we've got the guru of hamburgers on, and it's one of those things. It's like, I can't believe we haven't had George on the podcast yet. I mean, we've talked.
When you said that, Brian, I honestly didn't believe you on that one. Like, where have we gone wrong in our life right now?
Thank you. I've been left out. That's okay. I appreciate that.
Yeah, because even if you rewind a couple weeks ago, the Great American Steakhouse Revival episode that we just launched, talking about the comeback of the steakhouse, we still managed to squeeze in some burger chat about this. So burgers are ever present, but we wanted to go straight to the source before we put a lid on what we're doing here. Guys, let's talk about burgers, right? And it's as George said, there are multiple ways to, we'll say, skin a cow as we go. But let's talk about, George, if you could give us a little bit of the 10,000 foot history of the hamburger, because we're entering June and July. Man, everybody's going to be eating burgers, right?
Well, how far should I go back to the 13th century? Should I go back to the
take me back to Hamburg, Germany.
There you go. So actually, a lot of people say, where does the hamburger come from? Not surprisingly, I mean, the American version of the hamburger comes from Hamburg, Germany. And that's the simple story is that as Germans were seeking passage to America in the 1850s, 60s, and 70s, they would have to go out of the port of Hamburg, Germany. At the time, a very popular thing to eat was something called a Hamburg steak, which was literally just a chopped beef cooked somehow, served on a plate, and eaten with a knife and a fork with some potatoes and gravy. And that was one of the most inexpensive ways to get some protein while you were waiting for passage on a ship, which sometimes could take a month. They would get on the ship, and Germans would find themselves in the obviously in New York City, because that's where all the ships went. And they would get off the boat, and they would find Lower Manhattan. They would find Hamburg steak. That were previous Germans had established this German dish, which is now an ethnic food in New York City, enjoyed by Germans and everyone in America at that point. At some point, we don't know exactly when it happened, though we're getting to some people are starting to come up with some pretty definitive history at this point. But around the 1880s, middle of the 1880s, 1885-ish, the hamburger started to migrate across America and into the Plain States. The Germans were now looking for more space, and they took with them the Hamburg steak, which served on a plate with a knife and a fork. And at some point, you imagine that, their state fairs and parties, the hot dog had preceded it by a full decade. The hot dog, of course, is a portable food. And a portable food was exactly what the Hamburg steak needed to be. And at some point, we believe at many state fairs across the Midwest, the Hamburg steak jumped to a bun to make it portable.
That is pretty sweet.
And that's the brief version.
That's it. So in your historical, and of course Louis' Lunch in Connecticut, right? credited with being the birthplace of the American hamburger, but it was actually happening at fairs, things like that before they technically did it.
Brian, I'm glad you brought that up. It was as if you just teed that right up there. I mean, thank you.
Do what I can.
Recently, I don't know if you were the New York Post or the Washington Post last week actually definitively debunked the Louis Lunch claim.
Ooh.
Now it's been being debunked for many decades. Since I've been doing this, I've always said that Louis Lunch didn't invent the hamburger. I mean, they didn't. There's a great story where somebody ran into Louis Lunch in the 1900. They claim 1900. There's even a government document. They have whatever, some kind of like special, document, some big thing that's signed by somebody in the government saying these people invented the Hamburgs. They call it the Hamburg sandwich. The Hamburg steak sandwich is actually what they call it. I mean, I love these guys, and we know it's been debunked. I could never prove it because I've always told the story that obviously the Hamburg came, we don't know really where it came from, but somewhere in the Midwest by many different state fair operators who are trying to find a portable food. So, obviously 1900 that doesn't really work out because these state fairs claims are coming from the 1880s, 1890s. Now, we just found out recently, a very studious guy in Texas found in print an ad for a hamburger in a saloon in Texas in 1894, I believe it was.
No way.
In print.
Wow.
So that's pretty cool.
Game over.
Do we really want to give Texas more culinary credit? No. I mean, they've taken barbecue. Like, guys.
Oh, no. We don't know. We don't know exactly because there's this person, the same studious person in Texas also then found another claim in San Francisco. The reporter from the Washington Post found another claim in like Delaware. It's all over the place. It's over. It's game over. I mean, we have so much in print now. We're about to do a Burger Scholar Sessions episode about this because, I mean, can you believe there's breaking news in the world of hamburger history?
It's amazing. This is like Capone's vault, right? I mean,
seriously,
who knows what's out there? All right, so let's talk about it, right? We have talked at length over the 2 seasons of this podcast about the burger makeup, right? The idea of like, of course, like 80-20 ground chuck is sort of your universal gold standard. You have all these unique blends, chuck, brisket, short rib. Our pals up in Cleveland at Good Company do a top sirloin beef navel blend that is delightful. So good, right? So we've talked at length, so I don't want to rehash that side of it, but let's talk about the actual cooking process. And we already went to Louis Lunch, right? Which to me is one of the most unique things, right? And it's a vertical broiler system that they use. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I don't really know why this thing came about, but they have stoves in Louis Lunch that are they're upright broilers. In other words, it's like a salamander cooks on the top, sometimes the bottom. It's like a broiler, but it's a 2-sided broiler that cooks up and down, so the heat goes. It's very strange. I don't know why. These broilers have a date on the side. It's actually printed on the side. It says 1895, I believe. 1895. These are very old broilers. They still use them. They're still in play today. If they break, they fix them themselves. It's amazing. It's ridiculous in a way because it seems like a very inefficient way to cook a burger. You also can't put cheese on them because the burger goes into almost like one of those fish grates. Those when you put like fish things you use to put on an outdoor grill. Yeah, it goes in sideways like this. Doesn't make any sense. You can't put cheese on that because otherwise the cheese would just be all over the damn place.
Yeah. So where does the grease go? I mean, where do the drippings go on this?
Down somewhere. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, they taste great.
Yeah.
It tastes great. And what Louis Lunch does, which not many people do, is they use very, very lean beef. I think they're like 90-10 sirloin.
Really?
Yeah. But because of the way they cook it, I guess this salamander cooking. Yeah.
That's interesting. All right, let's talk about something a little more mainstream. And it's my favorite. I'm actually made up of 65% smash burger right now. Like, most people are like 70% water. I'm at least 65% smash burger.
Maybe about 95% at this point. So.
That's right. I mean, if we can, and Diana, give us a little bit of the idea of what happens when you put it on a flat top, especially when it's a very old, well-seasoned flat top. There's something magic that happens there between all that age on the flat top and the meat. What's going on there that is giving you that crust?
And that's to me the beauty of the smash burger is you get that Maillard reaction occurring across all surfaces of the meat. So before, I mean, you take a patty that's got a little bit of dimension and everything like that, you grill it or whatever, but everything in the middle is not getting touched. So now the smash burger, you press it down and every single surface area gets that beautiful browning effect on there that basically is like the same thing as caramelizing, but with just proteins. You don't have that sugar component in there, but it creates that crust on there and you get it on both sides of it too. I mean, I honestly I didn't really think much about the smash burger until I sat there and started like the science behind it. I'm like, man, this has to be a good burger. Like it has to be, there's no doubt about it. And you take it, especially when you add those like really thin shaved onions on top. Oh my gosh, like this, there's nothing that can compare to that taste. And so then you add on plus all the grease and everything. If it's on that actual flat top that's been sitting there for years just collecting. I mean, you know, they'll clean it every now and again, but it just has all of that extra fat too that gets smashed that actually is able to hold in as well. So now you're going to scoop that patty up and put it on the burger and it's going to retain a lot of that juiciness. And that's why that really amazed me with that Louis lunch of that's probably why they're using the 90-10, because I mean, if you're grilling, and this is shown in science, like if you have an 80-20 or if you have an 85-15, when you start to lose a certain amount of fat, they kind of go back to the same fat ratio at the end as the fat kind of drips out. So even if I start with a 90-10, it might hold around there. It might lose a little bit of fat, but if I had an 80-20, it's probably going to lose more of that fat in the cooking process and get closer to the 90-10. So it's like, well, why are I going to pay for more fat when we're just going to lose the fat anyways? But in a flat top cooking situation, or if you're cooking in a pan or something like that, you get to actually retain a lot of that fat. And essentially you're just like basting the meat in its own fat, which is pretty incredible. And then you add some cheese to the top and yeah. Yeah, it's I
told the New York Times years ago, I was talking to a reporter of the New York Times, Sam Sifton, and I blew his mind when I said, think of it as a burger confit, which is really what it is.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's a great point.
When you cook a burger over a flame, this is something I learned from your predecessor. I mean, Phil is a great guy, and Phil actually opened my brain to the science of the burger. I never even thought about it until he told me about it. From the film we made together.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dr. Phil, the other Dr. Phil. He taught me something very cool. He said think about it. When you cook a burger on a flame, the fat renders and the fat goes down. It can only go down. Well, it either stays in if you're not pressing it, but it's going to escape and go down.
Yeah.
Especially all those surface fats they're going to render and drip. The drips then hit the flame, and the flames are so hot that exactly. That's how you do this. It's like there's an explosion of fat, and the beef then becomes an airborne carbonic compound, right?
Yes.
That then settles back onto the burger, which, you know, we all know is what creates that flavor of the backyard burger, is not so much the direct flame, but the exploding fat that then falls back down on top of the burger and envelops it in this wonderful backyard burger flavor. Who's hungry?
Yeah, I know. Seriously.
Always. All right. So, you know what? I do want to come back to the smash, but let's talk about that. When you're cooking burgers over grates, right? You know, the idea of the press, you don't really want to do a smash burger over grates, right? Because
not unless you don't, because you know it'll happen physically.
Yeah.
You get into with this, like, you know, like you're making, I don't know what you're doing, but you're basically making like taco meat into the fire. That's not going to work. You can't press.
Yeah.
Hang on. So that you can actually put you put a skillet or a flat top on a flame grill, and you can do both, you know.
Yeah. That's why I do all my outdoor burgers. I don't mess around with the grates at all. You know, but it is that idea of that just blew my mind a little bit, because I hadn't heard that, and I've watched the video 100 times. It's funny, I did not pick up on that video. The video we are referencing is, if you go to YouTube and just search the science. What is it? The science behind the hamburger, science of the hamburger.
The science of the burger.
Yeah. And it's fantastic. I'm such a fan. Let's go back to this idea of cast iron, right? Of the seasoned griddle that you're cooking on. But if you look at Hamburger America, the film, the book, a good number of these old school diners that have been around for almost a century or beyond, that's the method they employ. Can you talk about that a little bit? I mean, that there is something there that You know, and I always look at it, I work for certified Angus beef, but it's one of those things I almost feel like I would never recommend they change what they're doing, because obviously it's worked for this long. So if you're not using certified Angus beef, it's cool. I'm still going to come eat. They have some magic there that is just inexplicable.
Well, I mean, keep in mind that at the beginning of the hamburger, at the dawn of the hamburger in America, there were no open, they weren't cooking on open fire. They were actually cooking on a flat top. But they weren't even cooking on a flat top. The flat top hadn't even been invented yet. The flat top is an invention that was basically invented by people who are cooking in cast iron skillets. That's how it began. In the beginning, it was cast iron skillets or some kind of like an enclosed pan. And they started to realize that all the fat was collecting in there. They had to get rid of it somehow. Some places actually embraced the idea of almost deep frying a burger. They'd get a lunch rush. They would smash a patty or make a flat ball and stick it right into the grease, and it would cook that way. And they realized people actually kind of like the flavor, you know. And it's something even weirder happened. So a bunch of places started to, they would, like, I guess during the hard times, maybe in the 20s or 30s, they would take yesterday's bread rolls, they'd crumble them up dry, and now breadcrumbs. They mix it into the beef, and then put that into their deep fry oil, and created this experience that was like, I mean, the flavor of the rendered beef fat collecting in those breadcrumbs is unbelievable. And there's still a few places in America that do it that way. In fact, there's one in Ohio, by the way, just so you know.
Who's that?
Really?
Miamisburg, Ohio, a place called the Hamburger Wagon. And they still do that. They still cook. They bread some meat, and they put it into a huge cast iron skillet on a horse-drawn carriage. It's very bizarre. The whole thing is, you need to go.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you're putting bread in there. You're almost putting like a sponge inside the meat to it. I mean, I would imagine it'll hold on to that. I mean, Diana, would you agree? I mean,
Oh yeah, like the seasoning and everything. And it's funny. So I went to Australia a few years back, and we were just kind of traveling around. They have a burger patty, but it's got like everything mixed in it. And they said, I mean, if you think about how Australia became, I mean, it's a lot of just poor people who've been in prison and everything like that, just like backgrounds. And so they said that was kind of their normal thing of it was throwing everything that they had left over in from the day before into ground beef and making a patty of it. But when I ate it, I'm like, this is phenomenal, because it has all these other flavors in there too that you really don't expect from just a typical patty, and just gives you the better texture and everything. Like, man, this is a really great, like, bad fortune, I guess, that happened, but it's just so much great flavors. I'm like, why don't we see more of that here? But that's really cool to see that you do actually have a lot of that going on within the United States, just kind of unknown, I guess.
Well, this goes back 100 years. I mean, this, like, the hamburger cart, I think this year or last year was 100 years old. So
That's awesome.
This goes back to the beginning. This is the beginning of we're talking about the dawn of hamburger. People were cooking in cast iron skillets, and some people just never got away from that. Eventually, the flat top was invented, which is very important, because the flat top, we call it a flat top, is a top that has what makes it so unique as a flat top is that it has something called a grease catch. And basically it's a channel where all the grease can go out and away. And that's so you can keep cooking and cooking, and the grease goes away. You don't have to worry about starting grease fires. You imagine that it only took a few grease fires
to figure that one out.
Figure that one out. Like, okay, let's see if I get this rendered beef fat really hot, right? Flames underneath. At some point, it's just going to burst into flames. Also, keep in mind also that in the beginning, when the hamburger was not seen as, it wasn't anything high end. It was not served in fancy restaurants at all. It was served usually from cloth made tents and haphazardly built, buildings that would go up in flames like that. They was probably the most flammable, structures you could think of for a cast iron skillet full of hot grease. It's ridiculous. So
maybe that's what started the Chicago fire. I mean, they always talk about the cow knocking over have we thought about that one? I'm just saying, I mean, World's Fair and everything.
Could have been a burger. So cast iron skillet, so cast iron becomes very important, obviously, because this is where everybody was cooking in some kind of a tank or a cast iron pan. And the funny thing was that you think about flame grilling didn't really come around until much later. And people think of that as like, that's the way, you should cook a burger, which honestly is the hardest way to cook a burger, the most difficult way.
That's interesting. All right. So,
from a shape standpoint, I completely agree with that. Yeah, it is. And then just degree of doneness and all that you have to worry about. You don't even have to worry about that with the smash burger. It's done. Like, it's definitely cooked.
I tell people, if you have a barbecue with your friends and you want to have a good time, you want to drink a little bit, sure, why not? But you're never going to create magic for your entire family or all your friends. You've got 10 friends or 40 friends. You want to screw it up, cook on a flame grill with a couple of drinks in your hand. Good luck. You are like a recipe for disaster. You're talking to your friends, you want a beer? Yeah, I'll take another beer. Well, how's the fire going? Oh, I think I burned them. So you have to, the advice I always give to people is that, number one, put the beer down. 15 minutes to make magic. Why wouldn't you want to focus? Number two, cook on a flat top. If you have a flat top outside, I swear, you have a flat top outside and put the beer down for 15 minutes, they're going to walk away talking about that for days and weeks and months. Like, wow, how did he do that? Burgers were so good.
Well, and so you are, famous for the, you obviously didn't create it, but the Oklahoma Smash, taking thinly sliced onions and you smash the burger into the onions on the flat top, right? So, no, it's the other way.
I smashed the onions into the burger.
And then you flip it?
Yeah. So people, it's amazing. Every single day, someone sends me some post like, this guy's doing it all wrong. You do it the right way. I just do what they do in Oklahoma. I'm not trying to reinvent anything over here. I'm just literally, my job as a hamburger historian is to make sure that everyone else is getting it right. And I get it right too. I mean, we go by details. If a place serves it in a certain type of yellow paper or whatever, I'm serving it in yellow paper. If they smash the onions into the patty instead of the patty onto the onions, that's what I'm doing, because people have established there's a way to make a burger. And they obviously have, they've got, a century of history behind it, and they still have customers coming in the door every day. You need to sort of follow what they're doing.
Yeah.
Well said. And it's historical accuracy, right? But what you're also doing, I'm assuming, because I don't love onions, but I want that onion in my smash burger, because I assume you're adding natural sugars, right? That will caramelize and just add another layer of flavor to the outside, right?
Well, it's any kind of like white or yellow onion will work, except that the very, very best is going to be like a thinner than paper sliced sweet onion.
Yeah.
Vidalia, if you're on the West Coast, Walla Walla. If you're in Texas, they call it Texas Sweet. It's a Texas Sweet, something like. But you got to get it has to be an onion you can almost like, eat like an apple, which you don't want. I would not recommend that. Please don't do that. And then send me a DM saying I have a stomach ache. Yeah. I ate the onion like you said. That's not what my fans sound like, by the way. That was just I want a wonderful fan. I love my fans because they like to tell me everything. I've got everything. I got so much information coming at me 100 miles an hour always. It's amazing. I love my fans. But thin sliced onion is the way to go because it has to cook. Nothing worse than a thicker onion that you're trying to caramelize. As the science obviously behind caramelizing an onion, it takes a long time. But if it's a thin onion, it'll just happen faster. And by the way, if you have this, the reason that my burger works so well, or the Oklahoma fried onion burger works so well, is because there's some great science going on there. It's pure science because you have hot rendered beef meets thin sliced sweet Vidalia onion or sweet onion. And when those two things happen, you have magic, absolute magic. People say, why is that a sauce on there? I said, yeah, it's called grease. Grease is a condiment. All right.
Agreed.
Can I get that in a squeeze bottle?
I have it on a shirt, actually. Grease. The other thing with the comment.
All right, let's turn the page to you're starting to see, if you go back 3-4 years ago, smash burgers were so the rage. And I say the rage, like they haven't been around for
trendy.
That's right. They're very trendy. Yeah. But you're starting to see kind of a return of the thick burger, right? And our mutual pal and actually former podcast guest Alvin Kylon from the Burger Show was making the case for the thick patty, and I think he actually has 1 or 2 options over Amboy in LA if you ever get out there.
Yeah,
talk to me about how do you feel about this? Because when people tell me, you see random people post on social media, I ordered a burger medium and they served it and there was no pink and all this. And to me, it just seems like an argument that never has to happen if we just eat smash burgers, right? But how do you feel about the thick burger?
Everyone goes back and forth. We err on the side of history and we eat the smash burger that's, that tastes great and it's been around forever, or do we go back to the fancy, almost like a fancier version of a burger, which is usually, to make a burger taste good, you have to use obviously great beef, as you know. But if you make it thicker, obviously you're going to taste more of the beef. So I think it's been a bit of a return, only because there's a sense that the steakhouse style burger or the pub style burger is a very beefy experience. So you really want to have that experience. Smash burgers tend to be enveloped in sauces and cheeses and all lots of goofy crap. My burger that I make has it has two things. It has cheese and onions. That's it. But I'm making a classic burger that is still a very beefy experience, but it's not as beefy as a thick piece of a thick patty. You definitely brings on the beefy experience. And for me, I think it's a great experience, because I tell people all the time, no matter how big or thick or the patty is, you want to still taste the beef. If you start covering up with sauces, you could go make I hate to say it, but like a shrimp burger or a tuna burger at that point, right?
I agree with that. I feel like a lot of times people just add all this stuff on there. I'm like, you're losing the whole point of the burger. Like, you're already, if you have a bun on there, that's plenty of stuff that you're competing with on top of that. But yeah, I do think there's a special occasion for it. Like, there's some times where I do, but it has to be seasoned right too. I think that's the biggest challenge with your thicker burger, is that a lot of people will under season it, and then all of a sudden they forgot about the whole center of the patty. Like, they season the top and the bottom, but that's it. It's like you've missed the meat in the middle. We got to make sure we get some flavor in there too. And that's usually when they start adding their avocado and peanut butter and all that on top.
Who does that?
Yeah.
Peanut butter? I'm kidding. That sounds great. No,
I'm a big fan of a peanut butter and jelly burger. Full disclosure. But yeah, I will say there's actually a restaurant that opened just like 30 minutes from here called South Street Grill in Ashland. It's really close to my house. They do a thick patty, and I don't want to admit how many of them I've eaten. Every one of them I have enjoyed. And that's kind of caused me to rethink, like, maybe there is room for these thicker burgers. And, so, all right. Two things I want to touch on before we let you go. First, you mentioned earlier the deep fried burger, right? The idea of it, right? When I think of a deep fried burger, I think of Dyer's in Memphis, Tennessee, right? Who famously, they were open for a long time. They got a new location, and they actually had a little parade to parade their frying oil that they've cooked all these burgers in down the street to the new location. What's going on in a deep fried burger that's not going on in a traditionally flame grilled or a flat top?
The deep friedness, I guess, versus your flat top. I guess it depends on the thickness of the patty and everything that you're going to have. Your deep fried burger, it's going to be a different heat transfer than you would on the actual flat top itself. So that's going to be your huge difference. I think you're going to honestly get a better, that browning, the Maillard reaction, you're going to get it better on the flat top than you would in your deep fried burger, based on your heat source and everything like that. But you're also going to get the extra grease from deep frying. So yeah, I don't know.
There are a bunch of places in the Midwest that still do, like we were just talking about, in outside of Dayton, in Miamisburg. If you go down to Kentucky, there's a place called Dovey's, and Dovey's still cooks they used to cook in beef fat. I think it was actually pork fat, and now they've had to switch over to canola oil. It's not quite the same thing. But if you have the temperature of the oil just right, the oil actually doesn't really go into the beef. It actually goes the other direction. It's actually it's considered to be a heat, right, a source of heat, but it's not actually go. People think it just soaks right in. But if you have the temperature of the oil just so, it will cook the thing you have in that oil. You have the addition, though, of the beef fat rendering out into whatever oil you're cooking in. So you have this weird transfer of greases, right? Greases and oils, which is pretty pronounced. In the case of what's it called, Dyer's in Memphis, what they do, they don't just drop a fat patty in there. What they do is they take the beef and they almost like smear it flat like a piece of paper. And they take it off of this marble surface they have in the restaurant and drop it into the oil. So now it's paper thin. It's like literally, I'm considered like almost like a hamburger potato chip, hamburger chip. And this thing cooks in a second, flash fries. And because it's so thin, it becomes crispy. It's a very crispy experience, and it's bizarre. And you get a triple. It's not that big of a deal. They're small. The patties become about that big. They start this big, and then they shrink to that. And you go put it onto a bun with some mustard, pickle, and onion. Pow! Think of the deep fried hamburger chip.
You could probably federally register that as a trademark. You know,
There you go.
deep fried hamburger chips. That's way better than kale chips. I'll tell you that. All right, the last thing, and it is one of those things you cannot have George Motz on your podcast and not talk about specific places to get burgers. The guy everywhere, I'll be like, hey, what's over here? And you'll be like, well, go over here. Like you just know instinctively, right? My daughter had a soccer game over the weekend over in Akron, and it was like, we're not going home without stopping at Swenson's. So of course we loaded up on Galley Boys and
Galley Boys.
Oh, it's delightful, right? So if you could, right? So I'm going to be selfish here. So we're able to track where most of our listeners are coming from, right? So I'm going to give you a state, and if you could just throw out a few places, right? This is like a sort of like a game show, right? So no pressure, right? Because if you don't have any recommendations in a particular state, we can just cut it and we can act like you knew it. Don't worry, man. We're here for you.
Yeah, no. Hopefully I don't need that.
That's right. All right. Number one, not surprising, Ohio, right? Give me your top 2 or 3. Or
I don't play favorites, just so you know. But I was my favorites are in my book. That's what I like to say. I have 200 favorites. They're in my book. Ohio is a really this hamburger rich state. Not just about Swenson's. I mean, Swenson's is a great experience. I would say Swenson's is one of my favorites for sure. But you go to the other side of the state, I got to tell you, sorry, I don't know why, but in Eastern Ohio, there's not as much stuff as there are in Western Ohio. Western Ohio is loaded. I mean, you've got K's in Troy. You've got the hamburger wagon in Miamisburg. You've got Wilson's Sandwich Shop in Findlay. You've got the Spot. It just goes on and on and on. It's what's it called? Zips Cafe. I love Zips Cafe in Cincinnati. Ooh,
excellent.
I'm going to choose from.
I'm going to throw on during the pandemic when we were quarantined. I was like, I got to go do something. I threw the kids in the car. We drove to Lima to get Cupid Burger. It was phenomenal, right?
Another good one, man. Woo,
so good. All right, you passed the first test. Number 2, Illinois.
Okay. Illinois is actually one of the greatest states for the people are now calling the lacy edged burger. A friend of mine, Titus, who's a food expert from the Midwest, mostly from Chicago area, alerted me to this trend. It was I don't know the history of the lacy edge burger, which exists literally from St. Louis all the way up to Chicago, almost Chicago. One of the most famous is a chain called Shoop's. Shoop's is a chain in Illinois that makes a lacy edge burger, and they're all over the state. Not all of them, but it's a bunch of them in northern Illinois. Also, would you say? What do we say? Illinois. Sorry, I got Indiana mixed up. Sorry, Illinois. There's a place called the Moonshine Store. If you ever get a chance, Moonshine Store?
That is like 20 minutes away from my husband's hometown.
Come on.
So we have gone. I swear, it is like a destination to go to. We
definitely goes there.
Oh, I know, but but when you do go there, it's like it's packed, and they're only open from like 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and for certain days,
as they want. It's like we're only going to make 50 today. Okay, we're closing.
I love that place. We actually had 2 exchange students from Italy with us one summer, and we made sure to bring them home and bring them there. We're like, this is a true American meal right here. So you're going to sit down and eat it. Yeah.
And the view of just like cornfield.
Yes.
Remember that thing. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. It's amazing you know where the Moonshine Store. No one knows Moonshine Store. Wow. But it's literally not on the way to anything.
No, it's in the middle of nowhere too. When you drive through the woods, and then it's right there. Yeah.
Hour from Terre Haute.
Yes.
Yep. That's it. So how did I do with Illinois? Okay. Well, did you say Illinois? So we got then you have all obviously Chicago, which we can skip.
Nailed it. How about Texas?
Oh God. How long is this podcast? Yeah. Texas is obviously one of the most burger-rich states in the country, and probably one of the most burger-rich regions in the world. Obviously, because they get all that great beef. Wow, I don't even know where to be. Texas, where? Wow. There's a great hamburger experience that no one's ever going to get a hamburger at. So I'll just tell you anyway. It's a place in Rockwell, Texas. Mark my words. Called Boots Burger, and if you actually manage to get a burger in Rockwell at Boots Burger, congratulations. I tell you right now, you're not going to get one. You can call ahead, you can beg, you can give them tons of money. You're not getting the burger. It's a locals only burger, and it's sold out of the guy's house, basically. And it's a guy who I think he works at a factory, I think a car factory nearby or something. And he goes home for lunch and makes burgers for 2 hours, basically. And then goes back to work.
That is awesome.
Good luck. That's all I'm going to tell you. That's all I got to. There's also, I mean, you go to Austin, you've got places in Austin, you've got great places in Houston, great places in Dallas. I mean, Keller's Drive-In, a classic. Where else can you go in America? Can you drive up? You know, if somebody brings a burger to your car and a beer. I mean, come on, it's as good as it gets. Give me a roadie.
That's the most Texas thing I've ever heard, I think.
Exactly. Right.
You know, I will not subject you. The next one, I had 2 left. The next one on the list is California, but I imagine that's probably a bit like Texas, right?
You give me like a hard one, like North Dakota or something.
There's only like 3 people there though, so
that's a good point. Yeah, but they're good people. They're really good. Those 3 people are awesome. They're awesome. Let's see. So in California, oh my God, again, it's like Los Angeles alone is like the epicenter of driving burger culture. Clearly, I mean, I don't know. Rocky's Crown Pub in San Diego is amazing. Rocky's Crown Pub, if you've heard of it before, it's fantastic, amazing. Place in Carpinteria, is that what's Carpinteria called? The Spot, one of there's what's her name, Julie Child's favorite burger spot from back in the day. California, wow. I do have a favorite that you'll probably never get to. It's a place called George's Burgers and Insults. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Good luck. Okay, that's all I got to say. George's Burgers and Insults. It's in Thousand Palms. It's called Thousand Palms. No, Cathedral City. Sorry, Cathedral City, California.
George's.
That place, you walk in and if you're you're not getting the burger. It's as simple as that. He'll be like, you out. Like, what do you mean out? Like, I don't like your face. Get out.
It's like the soup Nazi.
That's what I was just thinking.
But the thing is, if you get to know him, he's the sweetest, nicest guy in the world. Burgers are off the charts. You walk into that place and it's like guys with tattoos and Harley gear on, and like dudes just came off the golf course in Palm Springs wearing pink polo shirts, and they're all mixed together, and it's wonderful. Wonderful.
That's amazing. That's all right. Last one, Georgia.
Ooh, Georgia is a funny state for burgers. There aren't too many like old school classic places there. And Snack Bar, if it's even still open. Miss Ann unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. Another place you weren't going to get a burger unless you were super nice. You had to be really nice to get a burger there. And I think it's changed a lot. But she has something on the menu called the Ghetto Burger, and it was just a burger that was just bigger than my head, but tasted great if you could finish it and take a nap in the afternoon. But let's see, Georgia's a weird state for burgers. I don't know a whole lot there that are classic. There is a new place though that I love very much. It's called NFA Burger. I'll let you try to figure out what NFA stands for.
Billy Kramer. Yeah.
Billy Kramer. You know Billy. Billy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's a great burger. He knows what he's doing. He opened up someone said to me, "Oh, why should I go to this place? It's in the Chevron." It's like, yeah, this is where you find a good burger is in a gas station.
That's right. It's like going to Buc-ee's.
Yes, Buc-ee's, exactly.
Oh, all right. I had this whole diatribe about chains and things like that, but I know you like to celebrate the small guys, right? So I won't put you on the spot for the big chains, but I do have one question, just because I know this is like fighting words depending on where you're at, right? If you have a preference, Crystal Burger versus White Castle.
Ooh, wow. Here's the thing. I'll tell you this much. White Castle is unquestionably, I would say, the most historically important hamburger restaurant in the world. And that's because they go back to the beginning. They were the ones who cleaned up the hamburger's image and made it something we all like to enjoy today. If it had not been for White Castle and the guts they had to like sell hamburgers and change the culture of the hamburger, we wouldn't have hamburgers today, period. So that said, I've eaten at White Castle recently, not so great. They seem to like, it's just the flavor is still there, but it's just not, depends on where you go, honestly. Crystal, on the other hand, I think it's a better original sort of slider experience. And at one point, everybody was copying White Castle, and people had to stop because White Castle was suing everybody. That's not surprisingly, but a few of them kind of snuck out of the legal realm somehow and kept doing it. And one of them is Crystal. I think Crystal's a great burger experience. It really is.
Excellent. Well said. You heard it from the expert himself. on that note, we are gonna let you go back to your burger your burger ventures. Before we roll, you got a 50-pound bag of onions in front of you right now.
Oh, it's a 10-pound. There's 5 of these.
Oh, there's 5 of them. All right. So before we let you go, though, give us some plugs, right? What do people need to do to ride the George Motz train?
Well, first, Instagram. Everything I do, all the news I break, all the hamburger news I break is on Instagram. Motzburger, MOTZBURGER. My website also has a lot of stuff on it, georgemotz.com. But more importantly, we just started planning season 4 of Burger Scholar Sessions, which shoots next week. And then at the end of August, so August 2021, the season 4 launches, and we're very excited about it.
Excellent. Nice. And to be clear, that's actually shot from your that is not a studio meant to look like an apartment. That's shot from your home, right?
That's actually home. Yeah. And we shot the show during the pandemic. At the beginning of the pandemic, they said to me, if we set you some cameras and some lights, could you shoot a show? Sure, why not? And I sent them the footage back, and it was all socially distant, totally safe. And we ended up we're on our 4th season now.
That's amazing.
Insane.
Outstanding. On that note, George Motz, the author, filmmaker, you name it. Burger Scholars is, I think, the title that I'm just going to throw out. That I think that kind of says it all. The man who knows more about hamburgers. I always think I know a lot about hamburgers. I bow in your presence, sir. Oh man, you're a legend, right? We appreciate you for joining us here on the Meat Speak podcast, powered by the Certified Angus Beef brand. If this is your first time tuning in, we have 2 seasons, right? You can go back and catch 30 episodes in season 1. This is the next to last one in season 2, but you can find us across all of your major podcasting platforms: Google Play, Apple, Spotify, and a bevy of ones that I've never even heard of. You can also visit us at www, right? Do I even need to say www? That's so 1999, isn't it? On the World Wide Web. At certifiedangusbeef.com/podcast. So I'm Brian Shaw for meat scientist Diana Clark. The gentleman who's not here, Chef Tony Biggs. I think he's over cooking for Cowboys actually across the parking lot. We appreciate you for tuning in here on the Meat Speak podcast, powered by the Certified Angus Beef brand.